You're listening to the Electrocasts podcast. This is podcast number 10, featuring music and conversation with the prolific independent UK composer Ian Haygreen. Hello everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this new version of Electrocasts. This is Jeff, and I'm here with Case, and we've been waiting a while to have this guy on our show. We are very pleased to have Ian Haygreen with us today on Electrocasts, and we're going to be hearing a number of his tracks, and we're going to be chatting with him about a whole bunch of different things, musical and non-musical, and this conversation will just go wherever Ian wants to take.
Hey, how you doing, Ian? Good to have you on Electrocast, man. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Hey, Ian, before we start, can you tell everybody where we can hear your music?
Yes, it's on Bandcamp. Oh, God, I have no idea what the address is. You put Bandcamp in, and it's got Ian Haygreen, and find it on Bandcamp. I'm on SoundCloud as well. Mainly those two, Bandcamp and SoundCloud.
And you also keep a blog, don't you? Or an online journal?
There's a Tumblr thing, but basically I used to keep it updated, but I haven't done that for ages because I can't think of anything to write, to be honest with you. So it's basically all the stuff I like goes on there.
Uh-huh.
So, and my new stuff as well goes on there as well. So, yeah. But writing stuff down, no. Yeah.
Yeah, you do a lot of sharing of, you use Tumblr, and you do a lot of sharing of the music you listen to on SoundCloud and other places through Twitter.
I do, because there's a lot, certainly on SoundCloud, there's an awful lot of very good music, which I guess is largely unheard. Well, just as I am, I suppose, and a lot of us. There's such vastness of sound and experimentation and creativity, which you don't get in the mainstream.
Right.
But on SoundCloud and places like SoundCloud, it's all there. So yes, I don't listen to radio stations anymore. I just listen to SoundCloud, Bandcamp, and that's it.
Yeah, I use you as a thermometer of what's hip out there. I follow you on Twitter quite closely, and I look at all your recommendations, and I've found some really cool stuff through you.
Mm-hmm. Me as well.
I don't know if I don't know about hip or anything like that. I know what I like. I know that sounds like such a huge cop out, doesn't it? That's sort of people say, "Art, I know what I like," but it's I do. I'm fascinated by. I suppose fascinated by people who dare to be different, who will follow. It's not about money. It's not about exposure. It's about following the sound or the muse where it goes.
Yeah,
even to its extremes, fascinates me.
You also are a contributor to a lot of groups. I know the Disquiet Junto. That's sort of how I got to know you. Can you talk a little bit about how you go about contributing to those sites? What inspires you?
Well, what inspires me with Disquiet or Navia Haiku is the subject. There are some subjects I just think I really honestly don't know anything about this. I don't know where to begin, so I don't. Which may be a fault of my own, but I should probably push myself. But sometimes it's a difficult thing, isn't it? What inspires you? It's something sparks inside you. Something speaks to you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you just think, you latch onto that core subject matter. Never mind the story or what it's supposed to be. There's just that one little element in there which says, that's it. That's what it's about. And you think, I can take it from that point and expand it. So really, for me, it's. Sorry, I had a couple of beers. Possibly a couple of wines as well, but never mind. it has to speak to you. The subject they're pushing forward has to speak to you, has to resonate. And so if it resonates with me, then I think, yes, I know mentally where that's coming from, and I can picture a sound for it. And I build it all up from one sound. And that's how I do it. It's just comes from that one initial spark and that one initial sound. And everything flows from that.
So there is you sort of accept a challenge, and there is sort of a singular defining idea in there for you that you hook into.
Yes, definitely.
You also post a lot of pictures, and they're often pictures of skies, and I assume they are right nearby where you live.
Yes, usually outside the pub.
This is my local. No, now this is my local. No, now this is my local.
What's your fascination with skies? Or maybe I should begin asking what's your fascination with pubs, but let's begin with skies.
Pubs goes without saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Skies. Limitless. There's no limit. They just go on and on and on. There's no boundaries. There's no constrictions. The sky is the sky. It's totally the opposite of our lives. Our lives are completely wrapped up in rules and regulations. You do this, don't do that. You can do this, you can't do that. To the point that you're swaddled. Whereas the sky, it's just there. Clouds float across it, and at night, obviously, you look up and there's all the stars. And you look at those stars and you think, do you know, some of them went supernova thousands of years ago. The light hasn't reached us yet. How marvellous is that? How poetic is that? The fact that you're time travelling, in a sense, when you look up into the sky. And it's the liminal place that it's between us and out there and the unknown. And that fascinates me, you know?
And it's kind of like a sort of a metaphor for your music, isn't it? Because you don't like to be bounded in your music. You have a very broad range of styles and interests.
Yes, I do. My background is classical. I'm a classically trained pianist. I spent my pre-adolescent and early teenage years learning classical piano. And I love classical music, but my favourite is Baroque. You know, Vivaldis and Telemans and so on and so forth. That is my favourite period. I'm so entranced and in love with the Baroque period and the voices. And even like I said, Thomas Tallis and William Byrd. It's sublime. It's music which takes you to the highest emotional points, which is what music is supposed to do. Music is supposed to take you on a journey. It can be dark, or it can be light and happy, and anywhere in between. Music, well, for me, music is supposed to weave a narrative. But as a musician, I don't believe it's my job to dictate what you should be hearing from it. You take from it what you want to. Because we all have our own backgrounds and traumas and happiness and all the rest of it, which we invest when we hear a piece of music. My job as a musician, well, an amateur musician, I suppose, the way I see it, is to weave the background narrative, something you can hook onto and then weave your own story into that. Whether I'm successful or not, I have no idea, of course. But and as for the different styles I do, that really does depend on my mood. Some days I just think, do you know what, dark ambient, gloomy, graveyard shift, depressive, we're all doomed, we're all going to die. Here we go. That's what I'm going to do. The next day, do you know, I think, I'm in a happy place, I'm going to do something happy and cheesy. And I don't believe in, as an artist, constricting yourself to one particular style. I mean, it works for some people, and happy days for them. It doesn't work for me. I follow my mood. Yesterday I posted a track and it was a meandering, cosmic, organy, sort of drifty thing. And today it was, what did I call it? Almost rocking, which is sort of guitars and drums and all sorts, because that was the sort of mood I was in. I've just completed one called Kalimba, which I put on SoundCloud, but it's in private. So I'll probably release it tomorrow or Monday or whenever I can be bothered. And it's on the kalimba instrument, which I've got here, just down there. I sampled it, and I've just done a piece on that. It's not African, by the way. I'm not even going to attempt to try African music because I don't know much about it, so I wouldn't have a presumption to attempt to ape it, you know? It's all down to what mood I'm in.
So let's talk a little bit about your track "Not Alone" that we're going to listen to today. That is it's almost 10 minutes, which seems to be a average length for your ambient pieces, and it's definitely an ambient piece. But it is also a piece that that develops very gradually and has interesting elements coming in. Why is it called "Not Alone"?
Honestly, I couldn't think of a better title. I am rubbish at thinking a title. I do a piece of music without any thought.
Me too, Ian. You're not alone. Oh, no pun intended.
No, but I sit down, I do this piece, and I think, I quite like this. This is all right. What am I going to call it? I don't know. What's it reminding me of? Nothing particular. What should I call it? Oh, buggerations, I don't know. And the first thing that pops in my mind is what I call it. And that is honestly how generally I name my pieces, and not alone. But I suppose that there might well be, I could get very pretentious and go on about subconscious influences, but I'm not going to because I'm not pretentious. Naming the titles is generally the first thing which comes to me, I have to admit.
In this particular track, "Not Alone" can be interpreted in two ways. One in a threatening way and one in a sort of hopeful way. You know, like hopeful, like I am not alone, I'm not the only one, or not alone as a threatening presence. And I think that the track has both of these ideas in it, this sort of ambivalence between the two.
Sort of not alone in a John Carpenter way, and not alone in a Walton sort of way.
Right, or a Stanley Kubrick way.
Yeah, oh, well, you could take that anyway, couldn't you?
I got the feeling that, to me, it evoked the sound of space and memory coming together, which is a common, as you guys have alluded to, almost a speculative fiction, science fiction sort of approach.
Yes.
Am I on or am I way off?
No, I suppose you're probably right. I mean, memory is a very strange thing because memory is very subjective, but it's also usually false because one memory weaves into another memory, and recollecting something, you're not recollecting the memory of doing something, you're recollecting the memory of a memory of a memory of a memory of recollecting something. So it all gets slightly distorted. But I like that. I love the idea that everything's slightly askew, slightly distorted, but we honestly really don't know. Everything's a little ambiguous, I suppose. And Not Alone, again, primarily I did Not Alone because of the sounds. And that's how I always work, is from the sound. And I build the sounds up. And by often, probably completely by accident, a theme arises from that. Now, again, I could say maybe it's my subconscious at work, and that unbeknownst to me, I had this idea deeply seated in my head, and it came out, and that may well be the case. But the honest part of me says it's because I liked that sound, and that sound was great. What else goes with it? And it builds up, and you think to yourself, well, do you know, it has that sort of slightly creepy. And I'm very good at creepy. Well, my wife says I'm very good at creepy. Which is strange because I'm quite a cheerful person, as you probably guessed. But I'm very good at kind of creepy hammer horror, I suppose, kind of atmosphere. But that's what intrigues me. The dark intrigues me because the dark inside all of us has the dark. Mm-hmm. And I really think people should acknowledge the dark inside them because it's part and parcel of what makes us us. We're not all light and happy and, hey, let's hug trees and stroke bunny rabbits or something. It's also graveyards and ghosts and there's a vampire over there and all that kind of stuff as well. The whole gamut is what we are.
Why don't we take a listen to Not Alone, and then maybe when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit with you about how you go about choosing certain sounds, because I believe you also do a lot of field recording. And I think there are a couple of sounds in Not Alone that you have recorded. There's some voices in there. There's some creaking in there. So, Jeff, why don't you take us to Not Alone, and then we'll come back.
Everybody, thank you so much for being here and listening. We're with Ian Haygreen, and we're going to hear one of his tracks called Not Alone here on Electrocasts.
So, Ian, how do you go? I love this track, by the way. I listened to it a number of times, and I heard more and more little details in there that sort of gradually creep out. Sometimes creepy, sometimes comforting, but there's like vocal parts or voice parts in it. There's like almost like heavy footsteps, like a creaking. Where do you find these sounds? How do you go about selecting your sounds?
Most of my sounds, I record them actually in Colchester where I work. And when I go out for a ciggy, where I am, it's a 16th century building. It used to be a pub. There's no link whatsoever. I go out the back, and I think I'll have a ciggy and a cup of tea, and I think you can hear the traffic coming down the road, but where I am, I can also hear people talking and walking up the hill. Pop my iPhone on, press record, leave it going. I walk off a little way so it doesn't pick me up having a cigarette. And I just use those sounds. Sometimes I'll go somewhere, and I did an album, Land of the Horned God, I think. Some Bandcamp, and the entire album is literally just made up of sound recordings. And it's the Horned God. It's Cornwall. It's one of the names which Cornwall means. And wherever we went, me and the missus would stay there. I'd take a sound recording, several, and each track was just made up of the sound recordings from that particular place. Because sound recordings fascinate me. Jean-Michel Jarre's to blame. Magnetic Fields. When it came out in 1981, I went out and bought it, and one of the tracks had these snatches of of people talking, but there was other things involved as well, which he knew were either voices or recorded. But he obviously had a Fairlight, and he fed it through the Fairlight and did all sorts of things. So Fairlight was fairly new in 1981. And that intrigued me. And then, obviously, he did Zuluk, which was almost entirely voices, but they made the drums and the bass guitar, and they made up all these things. Oh, that is absolutely fascinating. And then, of course, the Art of Noise come along, using voices, and I got almost obsessed with how you can transform voices into instruments.
Yeah.
And then that went on, and then obviously, I mean, Brian Eno didn't invent ambient, but he popularised it, I suppose. And he did things, especially My Life in a Bush of Ghosts with Dave Byrne. And again, lots of voices, especially the American Southern preachers. And it was fascinating listening to all this, but incorporating it into music. And so, although I don't use a lot of voices in my work, I say that. I do, but I tinker with them in such a way that they become background noise. That I've just put a piece up, and I say almost rocking. It's not a voice, but it's kind of illustrates what I mean. That the first thing you hear kind of sounds like a fuzzed out guitar. It's not, it's a piano. But I've done it in such a way that it sounds like a fuzzed out guitar. Because I can't play guitar. I haven't got a guitar. Mind you, I haven't got a piano either, but that's neither here nor there. What intrigues me more is you take a sound, whether it's a piano, a harpsichord, a human voice, whatever it is, what can you do with it? Where can it go? How extreme can you go? Well, actually, you can go too extreme, but it's just bloody horrible. But you know.
But that's part of your artistry, Ian. That's part of the artistry that you possess that I enjoy. I mean, all of your tracks give you something to sink your teeth into, particularly the long tracks. Possibility of Dreaming from the One Night album. I just love that one. You put out one a couple months ago. It seems like a couple months ago because you're so prolific, but Attila's Empty Jam Jar.
Yes.
It's just a total soundscape. And as Kay said, the more you listen, the more you can find things in it. And really, it gives you something to sink your teeth into. As a listener, I find that very attractive. You take us on a journey every time.
And it becomes, your music is very cinematic. And while you probably do not have the intention to have your music fit with video or film images, it has a very cinematic feel to me, particularly a track like Under Different Skies, which is a shorter track for you, but it mixes both ambient and synth-based elements. Can you talk a little bit about Under Different Skies? By the way, there's the skies theme again.
Yes,
and the clock signaling mortality, right?
Well, there's always the clock signaling mortality. Under Different Skies, originally it was going to be called Alien Markets, but I thought it was such a naff title, so I changed it to Under Different Skies, which essentially said the same thing. And I was mucking around with stuff, thinking, that sounds all right. What if I do this, and I change that, and I tweak this, and I add a little bit here, and it came with that sort of, like you say, grand cinematic opening, and it builds up. And I thought, yes, that's very nice. I quite like that, but I can't have that all the way through because that would annoy me. So, what do I need? I need to go very quiet, like a native kind of drum. Just. But I didn't have a native drum. And so I thought, and I was tinkering around with stuff, and I thought, this would do. Guessing from memory, it was a field recording of something I'd done, but one element of it sounded kind of drum-like. So I looped it, and it just went on and on and on. And that's nice. I thought, no, I'm now going to keep it nice and quiet. Or rather, not quiet, but low-key. Mm-hmm. And just slight elements building up and dying down. I wanted to evoke, almost like, when you first saw Star Wars, first one, and I remember queuing up with Dad round the cinema to watch it back in 1977. And he went in, and he'd get all the Luke Skywalker-y stuff, and Obi Kenobi comes in, and they go to the cantina, and they've got all those different alien races and Han Solo and that sitting in this, galactic pub essentially, doing their thing. And I thought, it's not the creatures which fascinated me. It was the idea of this totally alien meeting place. Mm-hmm. I've not been there, but a lot of friends I know have, that these African markets. And I kind of wanted to evoke a little bit the idea of that you got a marketplace, but it's not going to be obviously marketplace, but it's just somewhere alien to us. And so it came about. I wanted to evoke somewhere different to where I lived, in the middle, in East Anglia, in the middle of nowhere. Somewhere maybe a little hot, arid, a different sun beating down on the ground.
Yeah, you almost sound like you're describing yourself as a musical anthropologist. Like you're putting yourself into places that are alien or different from your own experience, and that you pull your inspiration out of that. This idea of being under a different sky, or walking in somebody else's shoes, or being in somebody else's house.
Yes, that sort of thing, I suppose. Or an anthropologist of possible places, maybe worlds, never existed kingdoms, fictional places.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we hear Under Different Skies?
Let's do that.
Let's hear Under Different Skies, folks. We're talking with Ian Haygreen here on Electrocasts, and we're going to play a track of his called Under Different Skies. So I like the feeling of two different clocks, as we kind of alluded to. You know, you have a ticking, and then you have this Big Ben sort of, you know, gong chime sort of thing.
Church bell, yeah.
Church bells, yeah.
And then there's like dripping water sounds. What is that, Ian? How did you create those? It's almost like loud dripping water.
Do you know, I can't remember. I did this I can't remember when, I can't even, do you know, it's a terrible thing, but when I've completed a track, done, uploaded it, I kind of forget about it. And I think, I can't remember what I did. I have no idea how I did those dripping sounds. I really honestly can't remember. The big bell sound, however, you know the beginning of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony? That's, I suppose, symbolising death knocking at the door. That's what it's supposed to be. That was Beethoven's idea. And that has always, since pre-teens, when I first heard it, stuck in my mind, death just going on the door. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a wonderful motif, an idea. Mm-hmm. You can't get bigger than death knocking on your door. That is the ultimate. Right. And I think that's always resonated with me for all these years. And when you get the bell going on, it's kind of my musical idea that we are mortal. This is it. This is our stab at life.
Mm-hmm. So that's your inspiration for using that bell sound, that bell tower sound?
Yes, because I've loved the idea. There's a thing, I don't know if America has it, I honestly don't know, but in England, you used to have a thing called the death bell. And it would ring out when someone had died, usually someone terribly important, you know, the chap who owned your village. And it'd ring out, and it'd be this kind of very mournful, low-pitched dong. And it'd just ring out. And I loved the whole symbolism behind the idea that that one note summed up everything. It changed the whole mood of the area you were in. And you think, how powerful is that? That one bell note can change everything. And it's such a powerful thing. I think probably in a lot of the music, not all of it, obviously, but there's always kind of one note which symbolises your mortality. And I think it's a very healthy thing to think that, do you know what? In 100 years' time, not one of us will be here. All our cares, our worries, our concerns will all be of dust. Nobody will care. And I think that's a very liberating thing, because it makes you think, do you know what? Why the hell should I worry? I'm 45 now, and in 50 years, chances are I'm not going to be here. So, maybe in 30 years, who knows? But why should I worry and stress about this, that, and the other when it is so transitory? It's gone just like that. It's gone. A lot of my music, well, to my mind, now how other people see it is a totally different matter, of course, but how I see it is all about the transitory nature of life. It's the transitory nature of everything we care about, everything we think is important, everything we get worried about. Who cares? It's gone. It'll be history. So, I mean, obviously, you've got to care, you've got to worry, because these things do affect you as you're alive. I mean, I'm not saying, smoke a joint. It's putting things, I suppose, in a kind of a bigger historical picture, if you like.
You put this in a very pragmatic position rather than an emotional position.
Yes. Oh, of course I get emotional. I mean, I've been laughing and stuff throughout this interview. Probably inappropriately, but there you go. I've been laughing anyway. But I'm not a huggy, feely person. I'm terribly British. And all the repressed. all the repressed emotions and all that embodies. I'm proud of that. I love, that's one thing I love about the British, is we're trying to believe, oh, really? Have a cup of tea.
Yes.
We've heard that before.
Yeah. It's just, you see, every nation is different, and that's fine. The Americans deal with things in their way, the French in theirs, people of Swaziland in their way, and the British in our way. And that's what makes this such a glorious planet, the differences between everybody. And I love the differences. I think the differences, I mean, fuck homogenising everybody. What an annoyance. Everyone must be the same. Corporate, everyone the same. Stuff that. Celebrate the difference between everyone. Celebrate the fact that we all believe different things, we all think different things, but it all accommodates everybody's life experiences and how everybody interprets those life experiences. You know, and just... yes, hello?
Hey, Ian, you earlier you spoke about that you started out being schooled as a classical pianist.
Yes.
And we're in a little bit. We're going to listen to a track that is quite virtuosic. You are very accurate. You hit your keys with great accuracy. I listened to Chasing the Thrill with great pleasure. It made me think a little bit of the silent movie area. It had a sense of humor to it.
With Keystone Cops.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'll tell you for why. For a while, I've been wanting to do a piano album. Now, I don't own a piano, so I have to do it on my keyboard. When I was 5 years old, I lost an eye. Pair of scissors, school argument. I don't hold any grudge against the kid who did it, because we were 5 years old, for God's sake. I mean, but I was in the Chelmsford hospital for 6 months. Every Saturday. Now, the children's ward was opposite the women's ward, because it used to be segregated in those days. But they had the cinema screen. And being only 5 years old, they used to put me little desk or table out, chair, milk and biscuits. And they used to show Laurel and Hardy, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, the Keystone Cops. Regular clockwork every Saturday morning. And so, for 6 months, I would, when I wasn't too ill, go out and watch them. And sometimes they were the talkies, sometimes the silence. And I love the silence as much as I love the talkies. The piano accompaniment to the silence. And you think, now, I know the stuff we're listening to was recorded in a recording studio, but when they were first shown, it was a bloke sitting in the cinema with a piano or an organ, if they were rich enough, to improvise music to the action on the screen.
Right.
How bloody clever is that? How great is that? That is a superb musician. Yes. He can just whim change from dramatic to romantic, or straight into chase scene. And I love that. And so Chasing the Thrill, although a very spontaneous thing, although saying spontaneous, I had to record it in 3 separate sessions. What I use is my laptop, but the DAW system I've got allows me to play my keys as a keyboard, but that does limit the octave range. So what I'll often do is I'll play the bass, record a bass, and my basses often are very repetitive, so I only have to do 3 or 4 or 5, maybe up to 10 bars, and then I can just loop that. And then I'll play the middle range, then I'll record the upper range. Now, I will say, I do cheat. I'll go through and I think that's missing, so I can adjust it so it's musically correct, otherwise it'll sound bloody awful with piano music. I mean, I say, I was classically trained, and I got up to grade 8, which is, I think it's concert pianist standard. And of course I'd hit puberty, and suddenly became far more interested in other things. So I never really pursued it, which I kind of regret. But I don't, on the other hand, because my life would have been totally different. I wouldn't have met my wife for a start, probably. So I'm quite glad it went this way. The classical background, especially, again, and I mentioned the Baroque earlier, but Baroque, my teachers were Baroque experts. So I was infused with the Baroque period of counterpoint, and not in everything I do, but in some things I do, I think it's in there. It may not be recognisable, but it's actually is in there. I play this music. I listen to an awful lot of people's music. I mean, my musical tastes are very broad. But if people said, "What's your favourite piece of music?" it would still be classical, every single time. And in fact, my favourite is Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Because for me, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony encompasses every single human emotion. It goes from total despair and through all the emotions up to complete ecstatic joy. It encompasses everything. It tells the human story.
Ian, you've also journeyed into blues and ragtime recently.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Blues, Scott Joplin especially. The first piece of music I learned to play was The Entertainer, the Scott Joplin thing, which I used for, what the hell was that film? The Sting. And the music was and so on and so forth. That was the first piece of music I learned to play, and my dad taught me that, because it's the only piece of music my dad could play on the piano. And we inherited that piano from my grandparents. Granddad Key, he was in his 90s and nobody wanted it anymore. So we got it. And Dad could play that piece, so he taught me how to play ragtime. And I love ragtime. Ragtime is great. It's got such drive and energy. And from obviously ragtime, which I think is probably an offspring of blues and all the rest of it. I mean, I love my blues. And there's a rawness to proper blues. There's a rawness, a naked emotion to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't, well, you do get, but I mean, in mainstream, you don't get anymore. It's too polished, too overproduced. Whereas you listen to the old blues guys, and there was a bloke with a tape recorder sat down, shoved a mic in front of him, and they played, and that was it.
That was it, yeah.
Yeah, but all the little sundry sounds and the mistakes and all the rest of it were all in that recording, and for me, makes it much richer for that. The whole point of music is freedom. Freedom to explore things, to...
I think that is exactly what attracts all of us who are doing music, at our homes, when no audience than ourselves. It is the experience of that freedom, I think, that is at the heart of why we do it.
Yes, exactly.
I remember seeing a number of years ago, a long time ago, an interview with Gary Newman, and he was getting a lot of backlash because he had a hit with Cars, right? And he says, I don't know what people's problem is. I'm not using guitars, I'm using synthesizer, but I still have hook lines, I still have melody, there's still a beat, just like Tubeway Army, but they're different tools now.
Exactly. And to be honest, Gary Newman was hardly the first to be able to do that. People had been doing that for a decade beforehand.
Right, of course.
Well, no, people backlash, but is it actually the public or is it the media backlashing against something they're unfamiliar with? The first record I ever bought was Oxygen by Jean-Michel Jarre. I heard it in 1977 on the radio and I thought, ooh, never heard anything like this before. So I went out and bought it. I bought the album. The second album I bought was Rubicon by Tangerine Dream. Totally different affair. And put it on and thought, fucking hell, what the hell's this? But I loved it. I loved the fact that there's no melodies, there's no drums, there's no guitars, that it just drifts along, but it creates this whole world. And you get sunk into this world. So then, and ever since, I've never really listened to mainstream music ever since that point. Since, the early, late, mid-70s.
If we could, Ian, could we listen to Chasing the Thrill? And then we could expand on any other thoughts you might have. This is from an album called Music for Fake Piano, and I'd like to hear a little bit about what you had in mind there. So this is Chasing the Thrill from Ian Haygreen, and you're hearing it now on Electrocasts. So, love that kind of ostinato bass, and then how you change the upper structure of the harmony with that same ostinato, that same bass line going. Beautiful.
Yeah.
But also the use of the reverb on, the end of a melodic
hits,
line.
yeah.
I think those last two hits you also put in the background with reverb. That is very clever. That really perks your ears up as a
and
listener.
The backward swells, yeah.
Oh, I'm quite pleased. I'm quite pleased you liked it. It seemed right. I mean, you're both musicians. You know what I mean. It seemed correct to do that. Like I say, I had to, because I have to use my laptop keyboard to play things. So obviously the bass is fairly simple. It's a repetitive motif. Off it goes, does its thing. And so then I get the goes up. And I thought, I did that bit. What needs next? I need a nice, sort of almost dramatic, dun, dun kind of thing. But echo, or put a reverb on it, dum, dum, that gives it more weight, I suppose.
Yes.
Right. So, orchestral almost.
Yeah. And you'll notice at certain points there's bits where I've got the piano bits reversed, so it goes
Backward swells.
backward swirls. And again, it kind of fitted, but everything on that album is piano. There's nothing else but piano. But that's why it's fake piano, because it's not a piano. Obviously, it's the VST I got, which does a very good piano sound, because I've got no bloody room in this place for a piano. But everything had to be piano. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's what, it still staggers me to this day. Well, I can go into my laptop and I can play a simple piano piece or cello or some out of this world weird noise, and then tweak a few things, do this, do that, and create sounds nobody's heard. That staggers me. I just think that's just so brilliant. But I can do this stuff, sitting here. When I think back, when I say Tangerine Dream, for instance, in the 70s, had banks of equipment with wires stuck in here, there and everywhere, and their sequencers and all their primitive gear. And they'd need an awful lot of it to create an album like Fader or Rubicon or Ricochet or whatever it was. And I can do all of that from this laptop. It's staggering. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
And it's also become very easy to use things like sampled sounds or found recordings. In your fourth track that you sent to us, the Doctor Who theme, you actually use some recorded voices, and at some point a man, I believe, is talking to...
What's the point of being grown up if you can't be childish? That's Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor, in 1975 or 6 or whenever it is, talking to Sarah Jane. And you think that actually is a philosophy I do go along with immensely. What is the point of being grown up if you can't be childish occasionally? But also throughout that, you hear the second Doctor, the third Doctor, the fifth Doctor, several companions, the 2 or 3 incarnations of the Master, the great villain of the Doctor, and so on and so forth. The only reason I did that track was having watched Doctor Who since 1974. I am a bit geeky about Doctor Who. And I still watch it to this day, and I'm immensely looking forward to when it comes back in this country in September. And I should be there. I won't be behind the sofa like I used to in the 70s. But it's very British. It's not very British. It's for everybody, obviously. But it's so ingrained in British culture. Everything about Doctor Who is just the TARDIS, regeneration, the Doctor himself. It's just part and parcel of everyday conversation now, because it's been going for 50-something years. So it's kind of and you think, if you want to know what British is like, watch Doctor Who. You won't understand it. It'll make no sense. It'll be nonsensical and fantastical.
I thought that's what Benny Hill was for.
Well, yes, but Benny Hill's been gone a long time. He died years ago. And Benny Hill's good, especially the end scenes with the sped up chasing everybody. But no, Doctor, I mean, you think this is a program which started in 1963. That's 2 years before Star Trek.
Found your choice of instruments interesting. I think on the original 1963 version, they use, for the melody, they use some sort of, well, I think eventually became sort of a guitar-like sound.
In the background, it was a guitar thing kind of propelling the thing along.
Right.
And then I think originally they used this kind of siney, glidey, almost theremin type.
Yeah, it was all done with pieces of tape. I read on wiki pages. Actually, what I'll do is I'll put the link to the wiki on the Electrocast site when we release this so that people can take a look, because it was quite amazing how they made this music in 1963. It was all done with little pieces of tape, and then if it didn't align, they had to start all over again. It was just amazing. But you chose a fairly cheesy organ sound. No, it's not cheesy, but
I did. Do you know why?
Why did you do that? Is this your sense of humor?
Is this some kind of joke, Ian? What's going on?
It's partially, but it was a hark back to the 80s theme tune, which is fairly cheesy.
Yeah.
But I like it. I like the 80s theme tune, the Peter Davison, late Tom Baker, Peter Davison era. I like it, and it is a sort of slightly cheesy organ. So I chose a slightly cheesy organ. But in the second part, I don't know if it comes across. I might have mixed it slightly wrong. But there's in the second part, I added something to it to give it a slightly underlying menace. But I have to admit, I'm not convinced I mixed it correctly. So it may not come through. But I grew up, obviously, with John Pertwee and Tom Baker. Tom Baker is my Doctor in the 70s. But I loved the 80s music. I mean, it was terribly 80s. It was very 80s. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, because every program reflects the age it's made in, of course.
You gave the whole thing a bit of a twist, I think. Not just with the organ sound, but also the bass line. The bass line is a little bit, I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all, but it's a little bit like a galloping horse.
The reason I chose a bass was, at the time, it sounded right to me. And I wasn't trying to replicate what the original Doctor Who or even the version did. To me, what sounded correct to the kind of the background sound I'd already created for it was. But I have to say, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I quite like my version. I'm quite fond of it. I almost sent you the UFO theme tune instead of the Doctor Who one, which really does have cheesy 60s space organ in it. But that's what I loved about it. But no, I mean, I don't generally, in fact, apart from, I did Doctor Who, and I did the theme from UFO, Jerry Anderson, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Those are the only two covers I've done. I don't do covers, by and large. I'm not including things like The Right Spring, which I did, which is classical, so therefore technically isn't a cover because it's classical music. Yeah.
It's part of the repertoire.
It's part of the repertoire, yeah, exactly. So I don't include that, but someone did actually suggest to me I should do a 60s / early 70s album of cheesy science fiction music. And I thought, what a brilliant idea.
Ian, you're very prolific. I saw on Bandcamp you have like 29 albums out. Where is this going? Is this going to like double in the next year or what? What are you up to?
Probably. I've got 4 I haven't even released yet. Actually, are you aware of Cousin Silas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what has he done? 100? He did 50 in the last year or something. I'm not quite up to his standard. Well, to be honest with you, it's not going in any direction. It's not. I just. If I'm in the zone, I'll do it. Then I go for a couple of weeks and I don't do a lot. And then I get another zone where I just think I do an awful lot. And that's it, really. So, yes, there are 4 sitting on there, which eventually, when I get round to it, I will pop up there. I don't know when. When you get to that, when you're in that point when it's really flowing, you just go with it, don't you?
Yeah. You have to take advantage of it. Yeah. So we'd like to say we'd love to have you on the show again when you're ready to release your next album, but that was probably yesterday, and it will be again next week. So,
it might be next month or a month after. Well, when I remember to do it, actually.
Yeah.
And Ian, if I'm remembering correctly, you offer almost all of your music for free download, right?
I do, yes. Most of it is free, or pay what you like, or bugger all if you like. I did try 1 or 2 pay £3, and that didn't work out very well. So I just thought, do you know what? I'm an amateur musician. I do this because I enjoy doing it, and who am I to actually charge? I'm not a professional, so what the hell? I just enjoy doing it, and I'll still do it, even if nobody listens to it. I'll still carry on doing it. So why not? I do. It's not just because I enjoy it. I do it because I have to do it. Music is in my blood. It's in me.
Nice.
like a lot of us.
Yes. Yeah.
What a nice way to sort of finish off our conversation. Music is in my blood. I think we can all agree with that. It is. It's in there, and it will find its way out. Blood goes where it can't, right?
Yes, exactly. Usually into your shoe, but never mind.
Ian, this has been so exciting to talk with you because, we've been conversing and exchanging barbs and witticisms through Twitter for quite some time and listening to each other's music.
Yes.
And it's really been a thrill to finally see you in person and talk with you in person. And I hope that everybody's going to listen to this Electrocast is sort of feeling the sense of your enthusiasm and your zest and your insights. You have amazing insights, particularly found your discussion about the relationship between your work and Baroque elements, this idea of one's mortality, how that finds a way into your music, your connection with everyday sounds in your own world, with images and pictures in your direct world, but also your interest in alien worlds or worlds that are very different from your own. So it's been a really wonderful conversation, and it's been just thoroughly enjoyable for me, and I'm sure for Jeff as well. Thank you so much.
Well, I have to say, I have enjoyed it, and I was a bit apprehensive, because I've never done anything like this before. So I was a bit apprehensive, but I have to say, at the bottom of my bottom, it's been basically the alcohol talking. Thank you very much.
Yeah, right.
You're very welcome. On that note, hey, Jeff, why don't you take us out with the Doctor Who theme?
Yeah. So we've really enjoyed the last hour speaking with Ian Haygreen, and we are going to ride out on his take on the theme from the Doctor Who show. So thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time here on Electrocasts. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Susan, you're still my grandchild, and always will be. Now, you're a woman too. I want you to belong somewhere, to have roots of your own. With David, you'll be able to find those roots. Live normally like any woman should do. Believe me, my dear, your future lies with David, and not with a silly old buffer like me. One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine. Goodbye, Susan. Goodbye, my dear.
Well, of course I am. There's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes.
Hello. I'm the doctor.
Ah, there you are at last, my dear fellow. What kept you? What kept you? Founded arrogance. Never mind, you'll tell me later. Come and take a look at this.
The sooner we get to this place, the better, eh?